Hello everybody and welcome back to Season 5 of From the Rafters of Rupp, the Kentucky Legends Edition. I'm Kyle Macy. In previous seasons, we've highlighted many of the all-time great Kentucky players and coaches who've helped establish the Big Blue tradition and have been honored with their jerseys hanging in the Rafters of Rupp Arena. This season, I'm interviewing 5 former players who have prime candidates to have their jerseys raised to the rafters in the near future. So we invite you to sit back and enjoy the next 30 minutes of From the Rafters of Rupp, the Kentucky Legends Edition. I recently had the pleasure of sitting down with Larry Conley, perhaps one of the most complete basketball players to ever play at the University of Kentucky. At 6 foot 3 inches, Larry played forward and was an All-SEC performer for the Cats from 1964 to 1966. He could pass, shoot, rebound, run the floor, and defend. Coach Rupp repeatedly applauded Larry's leadership on the floor and counted on Conley's ability to keep the Wildcats focused and together off the floor. I began my conversation with Larry asking him who he recalls encouraged him to take his basketball talents to a higher level.
He was my high school coach. And I think that's true of a lot of guys that come out of high school. When you get ready to move on to the next level, if you're good enough to play at the college level, that's the person that gets you going down the track. Once you get on the track and you start moving down there, I will look back and tell you that, and I'm sorry he's gone now, his name was Bob Wright, but Coach Wright was the guy that actually got me moving in the right direction, and he was a great basketball coach, just great.
Larry played his high school basketball for the Ashland Tomcats, and in 1961 and 1962, he led his team to the 16th Region Championship and on to the coveted Sweet 16 state basketball tournament.
My junior year, I played with all these seniors. We had 4 seniors that started. And I will tell you that nobody even got close. It wasn't even close. And, everybody just looked around and said, look, they're going to win the whole thing. And we did. And we kind of breezed through it, frankly.
Ashland won the 1961 Kentucky State Championship, defeating Lexington Dunbar 69-50 in the finals at Memorial Coliseum, and Larry was named to the All-State Tournament team. The 1961 Ashland Tomcats are still considered by many to be the best high school basketball team ever assembled in the state of Kentucky.
One of them was Harold Sargent, who was a really excellent guard, really good guard, knew what he was doing, but was so smart, knew the game, knew what was going on. He was a very, very bright guy. And I had a guy by the name of Steve Cram was the other guard, and he's a very successful businessman. He's done very well for himself. There were a good group of guys. All of us got college scholarships. Like I said, Sarge went to Morehead. Steve went to LSU. Gene Smith ended up at the University of Cincinnati. And Bob Hilton ended up going to the military academy.
The following year, with Larry as the only returning starter, Ashland again earned its way to the Sweet 16. On this trip, however, the Tomcats lost in the state finals to Mike Silliman and his St. X Tigers 62-58 at Freedom Hall. Larry was again named to the All-State Tournament team.
Our basketball coach, Bob Wright, had a policy. And then after his junior year with this group, he decided that he was going to take all the letters that came in from the colleges and put them in a box. And you couldn't see them. You didn't get to see him until the season was over with. And when the season was over with, he'd go into this room and he pulled out these gigantic boxes. And I did have a lot of letters. And the only school I ever visited, other than Kentucky, was Duke. I went down with Mike Silliman. The two of us went down, and that's when Duke was really good. I mean, Krzyzewski's got good clubs now, but Vic Bubas had really good teams when he was there. He was there for about 10 years. They got to the Final Four of the championship game one year. They were one of those teams that UCLA beat in that string of wins that they had. Duke had really good basketball players.
After his senior season at Ashland, Larry was named a consensus high school All-American. Conley could have literally signed to play his college basketball anywhere in the country.
My dad, because he was a high school coach and also a referee, his involvement in what was going on with me was pretty intense. And he said, he didn't ask me if I was going to go to Kentucky. He just wanted to know, do you like Coach Rupp? I said, yeah. I said, look what he's accomplished. I mean, this was in 1962, and He'd already won 4 national championships. I mean, it had already been done. But he didn't really recruit me. I mean, it wasn't one of those things. It was almost assumed. It was assumed by everybody in the state that I was going to go to Kentucky. Well, you're going to go there. Where would you go? Why would you go anywhere else? You're not going to go anywhere else.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of my conversation with Larry Conley after a word from our sponsors.
It's pizza that's made to order, the way we like it. And their wings and their wing bites taste great. Hey, save me some. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's great.
Practice your shot in our indoor, temperature-controlled shooting range or work with one of our experts to choose the right firearm for your next outdoor experience. Bud's Gun Shop and Range. Find it here.
Larry entered the University of Kentucky in the fall of 1962, and it didn't take long for Conley to figure out what it was going to take to be a successful Kentucky Wildcat.
The freshmen all dressed with the varsity. As you remember, that room was really small. I mean, there wasn't a lot of room to move around in there. But everybody was all dressed and we were ready to go out on the floor. And you had something you had to do. You had to get on that weight, and you would record the weight of your body weight, and write down the figure there. And when I walked up there to put the number down, Coach Rupp walked into the room. And he walks over to me and he looks at that weight and he says, "Conley, who's a better coach, me or your high school coach?" The first mistake I made was in hesitating. And when I hesitated, he said, "Huh, you're going to learn a lot here, son."
There's no doubt that Coach Adolph Rupp had his own way of running the Kentucky basketball program, and his success on the court is indisputable. The Cats dominated the Southeastern Conference under Coach Rupp, and when Conley entered UK, the Cats had won more NCAA championships than any other school in the country.
And I will tell you that by the time I got out of here, I had a lot of respect for him. I really did. There was a man who was creeping towards 70. He was getting really close to 70, who had so much success. He was totally driven. I mean, I don't know that I've ever met anybody in any profession who was more driven to succeed than Coach Rupp.
Like all first-year student athletes, Conley was not eligible to play at the varsity level during his freshman year. He concentrated on his academics and watched as the Kentucky team posted a 16-9 overall record, but failed to reach the NCAA tournament for only the 3rd time during Coach Rupp's tenure at UK.
The group that I came in with, there were 6 freshmen that first year, and I will tell you one of the guys that I thought had as much talent as any player I ever played with, a guy by the name of Mickey Gibson. He was 6'2 and a half, 6'3". He could jump out of the gym, and could he shoot? Now, would he guard anybody? Of course not. He wasn't going to guard anybody. He didn't want to guard anybody. But the offensive part of the game was his style. Boy, it was really good.
After a few games into his sophomore season, Larry moved into the starting lineup. He tossed in 12.2 points per game, good for 3rd on the team in scoring behind only seniors Cotton Nash and Ted Deacon.
Deacon was a good player. He was really good. He was kind of a surprise to me. You know, I saw him play in the high school tournament when he was playing at Flagey High School in Louisville. I thought he was really good, and then all of a sudden I show up in Kentucky, you know, and he's there. You know, I mean, and I thought he was a terrific player. And Ted and Cotton and a guy by the name of Charlie Ishmael from Mount Sterling was one of the guards. Randy Embry played a whole lot. Terry Mobley played a lot. What we had were good basketball players.
Kentucky mounted a 21-6 record for the 63-64 season and won the Southeastern Conference. 3-time All-American Cotton Nash led the Cats in scoring with a 24-point-per-game average.
Cotton was a very strong, forceful individual. He was one of those guys, as good as he was, and boy was he good. I mean, he could do a lot of things. I think he was a 3-time All-American. I mean, he made it all 3 years that he was here. And I jumped in there as a sophomore, and I think a little bird told me that if you're going to play on this team, you want to make sure Cotton Nash gets the ball. And you know what I did? I made sure he got the ball most of the time.
The Cats were ranked as high as number 2 in the country near the end of the year, but lost 4 of their last 5 games, including an 85-69 loss to Ohio University in the first round of the NCAA tournament.
I just thought, well, wait a minute. We got to get this back together. Let's get going, you know? And there wasn't that rush. You know, we'd won the Southeastern Conference. We'd ended up beating Tennessee. Tennessee was our biggest rival that we had in the league at that point in time. But I will tell you that it never came together. It never came back together. For some reason, it just disappeared over that next 3 weeks.
We'll return with more of my conversation with Larry Conley after these words from our sponsors.
Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance. Big on commitment.
Fueling Kentucky, fueling America, fueling growth. Friends of Coal.
In his junior season, Larry welcomed a couple of high-profile diaper dandies to the Kentucky starting lineup. Sophomores Louis Dampier from Southport, Indiana, and Pat Riley from Schenectady, New York, quickly established themselves as the Wildcats' leading scorers.
Louis was very quiet. He didn't go out and try to impress anybody. I mean, all he wanted to do was to let his play dominate his type of play. Pat was the total opposite. Pat could tell anybody about anything you wanted to know. And if you didn't know about it, he'd make it up. He's a good guy. He really is, still is.
For the season, Dampier averaged 17 points per game, Riley 15, and Larry Conley tossed in 11.6 points per game. The Cats turned in a disappointing 15-10 record on the year and failed to make the postseason tournament.
Yeah, we didn't have a center. We weren't very big inside. I mean, that was a period when Tennessee and Vandy had a great basketball team back then. I mean, they really did. I was just trying to think. Besides Clyde Lee, I mean, Clyde Lee was one of the great players the Southeastern Conference ever had. Maybe one of the best college players that ever played. And then you've got other guys that came in there that filled in around him, and they were all good, really good players.
Vanderbilt finished the 64-65 season 24-4 and won the SEC. In a 91-90 loss to the highly ranked Commodores, Larry had his best scoring game as a Wildcat and poured in a career-high 31 points in the late-season matchup at Vandy.
I was in another world, I promise you. I never got that high. I mean, that's probably the 2 highest games I ever had while I was in college. And I love playing against Vandy. I mean, whatever I decided to do, I shot it and it'd go in. And Riley would look over at me and he says, "You gonna let us have it too?" I said, "No." I said, "I can't miss."
Coming back for his senior year, Larry was determined to get the Cats back to the top of the college basketball world. And Coach Rupp's objectives were the same. Rupp hired a new assistant coach named Joe B. Hall to help get the Cats back into the national championship conversation.
I had made my mind up. I thought, you know, I got 1 more year left of college basketball, and you get yourself prepared for the next year. Well, that's when Coach Hall came in. That was his first year, was my senior year. And he put that running program in. He almost killed us. By the time I had finished the second week, I had lost so much weight, and I ate big lunches. I started to back off on my lunches because a lot of my lunch was left out there on the cinders. And I just said, you know, this is going to be a better year. By the time I reported for practice, which at that time was October 15th, I was in the best condition I'd ever been in my entire life.
The 65-66 team was definitely in great condition. With 4 starters returning in Pat Riley, Louis Dampier, Tommy Cron, and Larry Conley, the missing piece for the Cats was to find someone who could man the middle.
Well, the newest addition was Thad Jarris. Thad filled into slot in the middle, and you got me, you got Cron, you got Dampier, and you got Riley, and you got a sophomore in there that nobody knew anything about. Well, everybody concentrated on the 4 of us. They just forget him because they didn't think he could play that well. Well, he was scoring. I mean, he was getting big numbers early. I mean, he was really doing well. Then, of course, Louis started picking it up and Pat started picking it up.
We'll return with more of my conversation with Larry Conley after these words from our sponsors.
Fresh, tasty, savory double dogs. In a single word, delicious.
We are the hospital to meet the healthcare needs of the Commonwealth. The best in Kentucky, the best for Kentucky. UK Healthcare, the power of advanced medicine.
The Cats entered the 65-66 season unranked, but got off to a blistering start. Kentucky won its first 23 games of the season, including a 103-69 blowout win over Notre Dame at Freedom Hall and 2 wins over the top 5 ranked Vanderbilt Commodores. By mid-February, Kentucky had climbed its way to the #1 ranking in the country. With no starter standing over 6'5", the national media respectfully tabbed Kentucky's top-ranked team, Rupp's Runts.
Yeah, I think it was Larry Beck said that. Beck said something. He was a sports writer in Louisville at the Courier-Journal. He called them Rupp's Runts, and it stuck. For some reason, that just stuck. And it just carried on, actually. It got picked up. It started in the South, and then it went to the East, and then by the time you get to the end of the year, all of a sudden, we're going to be calling Rupp's Runts.
The Cats entered the NCAA tournament 24-1 and ranked #1 in the country. Wins over Dayton and #9 Michigan sent Kentucky to the Final Four in College Park, Maryland. In a classic Kentucky-Duke Final Four matchup, the #1 ranked Cats prevailed with an 83-79 win over the #2 ranked Blue Devils. The win set up the historic championship game with 3rd ranked Texas Western, a game that has been talked about from a racial perspective for many years.
It was for everybody else, but the only thing we were concerned about was winning the championship. I didn't care who we were playing. I just wanted to beat them. Now, they had 5 players, black players, who started, and they were good players. I mean, all 5 of them, and they were really good on defense. So one thing that I remember about their club, they were really solid on defense. Offensively, I wasn't so sure, but they did it well enough to win that game.
Texas Western defeated Kentucky 72-65 to win the 1966 NCAA championship. Larry Conley scored 10 points in his last game as a Wildcat and hoped to continue his playing career at the next level with the Kentucky Colonels of the ABA. After a brief stint with the Colonels, Larry was called in a different direction.
I ended up joining the National Guard, and I was going to have to, after the season was over, I was going to go have to do my training. Well, I called them, and they had sent me a notice that I was playing basketball, and I said, well, look, I've got some time after the season. They said, now. You're going to go do your training now. I didn't question. I just said, okay, and I was gone. I think I had 4 points in my pro career. That was it. And then I went to GW as an assistant basketball coach.
Shortly thereafter, Larry began a career in broadcasting that spanned 42 years on the air. I asked Larry how he got his start.
I'm working for Converse. I'm working for Joe Dean. And I get a call from Joe one day, and he says, Larry, he says, Eddie's going to call you. He said, you want to do some basketball games on television? And I said, yeah, I'll do that. And I had started out working in public television in the state of Georgia. They didn't pay me. All I did was just show up, and I worked with a guy, I can't even remember the guy's name now, and I did a couple of years of public television just doing Georgia basketball games. That's all I did. But I didn't get paid for it. I just showed up to do the games. So Joe says, look, are they going to pay you $200? And I thought, they're going to pay me? This is great. So anyway, I ended up doing Vandy in Florida. That was the first game I ever did, 1973.
Larry broadcast games for ESPN, NBC, ABC, CBS, and over a span of 4 decades was the most familiar voice of SEC games with Raycom Sports. Conley was voted into the State of Kentucky Athletic Hall of Fame in 1997, and as a former Wildcat is one of his most cherished awards.
Kyle, I'm very, very proud of that. It really is. It is so important. I played here. I broadcast a lot of Kentucky games, probably more Kentucky games than anybody ever did while I was working. But I think in the end that you get yourself prepared to handle a very astute audience. And I mean that sincerely. I find that the Kentucky audience is a really good audience, and they don't take a back seat to anybody in knowing about this game. Now, can you improve it? Can you give them information? I always felt like the most important thing that I had to give to the people that were listening to me was information. If you had information about what's going on, that enhances what you're doing. And I think those Kentucky fans are about as good as any you've ever seen.
Larry Conley's overall numbers while at Kentucky were extremely impressive. He averaged double figures in points scored all 3 years on the varsity, averaging 11.5 points per game for his career. He led the Cats in assists every year while at Kentucky, averaging nearly 4 assists per game. His individual influence on the national runner-up team of 1966 was invaluable. Talking to Larry, though, it's obvious that he never focused on his individual accomplishments.
To me, that was all secondary. The numbers didn't mean anything to me at all. I did what I had to do in the position I was in on the floor at the time I was playing. All I wanted to do was win the game. Let's win.
Larry Conley has enjoyed a career of success both on and off the court. He has great memories of his time at Kentucky, and although basketball has been very good to him, Larry does recognize his success encompasses so much more than just basketball.
I had 2 sons, absolutely love them to death. I got 2 grandchildren, got a great wife. I have had a terrific career, and it has helped me travel the world. I've traveled all over the world doing basketball games. I have. And I cannot say that I would do that had I had another profession. But basketball has given me the chance to do that.
Larry was inducted into the University of Kentucky Athletics Hall of Fame in 2007. His passing skills, his knack for rebounding the ball, and his ability to score the big basket when needed made him the heart and soul of the Runts teams of the mid-1960s. Larry Conley, the 6'3" forward from Ashland, Kentucky, will always be regarded as one of the most versatile players to ever wear the blue and white. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Until next time when we hear more tales from the Rafters of Rupp.
From the Rafters of Rupp was brought to you by UK Healthcare, Bud's Gun Shop, Double Dogs, Friends of Coal, Hunt Brothers Pizza, Kentucky Farm Bureau, and by Rafferty's.